We're going to see some stabilization in this monetary cycle, but the probabilistic outcome is we have to live in the next 6 to 12 months forward, because that's where crypto lives. And so what it's saying is the rate of change of liquidity is now somewhat improving. It's still negative. So I think crypto gave us the signal that things are changing at the margin, but it's too soon for it to fully drive prices. Crypto winter finished in June 14th, and crypto spring started. And spring is muddy, some days cold, some days sunny, some days wet, some days windy. But what follows spring is summer, and we're still in spring. So the market goes up and down, doesn't really do a lot, doesn't feel good for anybody, neither bulls nor bears. And that is the function of the economic cycle starting to turn. As the bond market starts to become even more illiquid, it's bloody illiquid now. I think it's broken. It's broken away from the business cycle. It's broken away from inflation break-evens. It's completely not tracking anything. It's like on its own, unanchored, untethered. That's going to produce unintended consequences. Does the equity market need to break? Not necessarily. The bond market has broken. This is the worst performance in bond market history. This is the worst performance of 60-40 portfolios in history. What we're actually doing is breaking the baby boomers' pensions. And politicians don't like that stuff, because guess what? They're all baby boomers and all their friends are baby boomers, and baby boomers are 76 million voters. The last thing they want is to upset those people. So they will eventually come to the rescue. So it's possible that you have the March 2020 event. It's possible that you get one final sharp panic over the next 2 weeks. And I think that's the time horizon we're talking about, 2 to 3 weeks. But we kind of know the outcome. The expected future return explodes the closer you get to the authorities having to fix it. And the upside already, 10x just to get back to the high. And its network activity is still high. So the expected upside, if it does get adopted further and it continues to grow, the expected upside of these things are bananas now. Ethereum, the bananas expected upside. So really, whether you get it 30% cheaper in a sell-off or not is kind of irrelevant at this point. It means where there's not enough participants in the bond market because they're hampered by regulation or market conditions to allow for the smooth setting of prices by the market itself. And a function of that can be bid-offer spreads widening. So anybody who's in crypto will know a very illiquid token has a wide bid-offer spread. And that becomes very costly because you buy it and sell it because you've changed your mind. You've lost a decent amount of money. The bond market is the biggest, deepest, most liquid market on earth, and it's become illiquid. That's a terrifying thing. Why is that? It's because bank regulation has meant that banks can't buy or add more treasuries to their balance sheet. They have parked all their capital in the reverse repo system, which is another fancy place that you can park money with the Federal Reserve, which is shut out of the market. So the banks can't get involved. The pension system's getting nuked on the 60-40 portfolio. So they were a traditional buyer. They're out of the way. The foreign central banks have been defending their own currencies and have been losing reserves. So they're selling US treasuries. So you have a awkward situation where the biggest, most liquid, the deepest market on earth has no buyers. That's terrifying. The Bank of England worked this out last week and went, okay, we have to be the buyer of last resort, the role of a central bank. The central bank is going to have to be the buyer of last resort if we're not careful. And I look at the US bond market, and that's the big daddy. I'm terrified that if we're not careful, anything could turn this from 10-year yields being at 385, which is ludicrously overpriced versus the business cycle, to will come in one day, it's 485, 5%. I mean, what the is that going to do to the global financial system? What does it do to the mortgage market? Mortgage rates at 30-year mortgages in the US are 7% now. I mean, this is really, really bad outcomes. What happens to the lending markets overall if this happens? They completely seize up because nobody can. If your benchmark yield is untethered, you can't price risk. If you can't price risk, the market doesn't function. The central bank has to price the risk, which is yield curve control, where they buy the bonds at a certain yield to stop it. Now, what does that do? It debases your currency because you're printing currency to do it, in essence. So, the moment we move to yield curve control in the United States, which is the world's reserve currency, and I think we might have to do it, well, asset prices rip. And that creates a problem, because do you create inflationary side effects from doing that? It's a really, really complicated macro world. It's like right now, just going off topic, is the Saudis and others have well, we don't want oil to fall. And the US is like, we need it to fall ahead of the election. We need to get inflation down. And the Saudis are like, well, we don't really want oil at $60. We want it over $100. So they cut supply. So the break-even rates of inflation, which is the market's future inflation gauge, just rocketed higher in the last 2 days. Well, that's a problem, because it means the Fed need to go further. And if the Fed need to go further and the bond markets are liquid, the bond market's going to overshoot further, and then the dollar overshoots and it blows up other economies. This is a bloody mess, and I think it's broken. I'm thinking that the RV NFT is less about the art, even though the art is gorgeous and the community was involved in building that out. It's actually a Genesis NFT of the entire Web3 build out of Real Vision, of which there is a tremendous amount going on. And I've talked about the tokenization of Real Vision. It is a membership to a club, and it's a membership to a part of that massive Web3 future. So that's how I think of it. It's kind of like a Bored Ape was your passport that accrued value over time for all of the things that Yuga Labs did. But it has the utility that Proof has, where it's actually a club where you get to meet other interesting people and create opportunities together with them. So, the good thing about Real Vision is, we're not just doing an NFT for the sake of an NFT. It's actually a core part of how we believe in community and utility that we can drive. We're looking at things like no secret crowdsourced asset management, all sorts of things, fantasy trading leagues, all sorts of ways that people can participate in communities together, and NFTs are your entry to that community. I'm very interested in the broader layer. I'm very interested in ticketing and where this is going. I think in Argentina, somebody's been doing it for airlines, which is something I've been talking about, and 6529 myself talked about this for a while. I'm really interested in films and film franchises, film financing. I was part of a documentary that you guys have seen. They've got some NFTs called New Here, which is amazing. Ben Mesrich has been on many times, and we'll follow that story as it comes through about what he's doing with books, film, scripts. I still am very interested in seeing how culture coalesces. I've always got my Rec Guy is up, and whether it's the Rec Guy or Max Payne and Friends, they're all about the culture of crypto, and we're all in this together. I find that very interesting. I'm also interested in what is the next big thing that's coming at the protocol layer stuff. Ash has talked about the cross-chain stuff, which is very interesting. Ethereum is always very interesting. What else is happening? There's a lot of buzz around things like Aptos, and buzz still around Near, and buzz around one that's still coming, which is Sui. There's some interesting stuff out there. So it's really my eyes on the future and what the world is going to look like in 12 to 18 months' time. And considering how many people are building things, how many people want to disrupt things, how many people kind of know the sorts of things that we've been talking about endlessly and are doing something about it, I think is going to lead to extraordinary outcomes of which we don't yet know. We've seen, for example, Carlos, who has been on Real Vision, I think he's from Securitize. Super interesting. I think Santiago interviewed him a while back. Now he's starting to really tokenize assets and asset management at scale. He's been doing some amazing partnerships. Different people who focus on different areas will notice these incredible breakthroughs that are happening in front of your eyes. It's hidden by the fact that the market's in crypto spring and you don't really feel it. But shit is going on at scale.